So, welcome back to another Coffee and Heroes podcast. Your host, as always, Alan, owner of Coffee and Heroes in Belfast. Delighted to be joined as ever this evening by Mr. Keith Miller. How are you, sir?
I am not bad. I'm not bad. Heading off to Scotland tomorrow for the Scottish Album of the Year Awards and to spend a wee bit of time with a couple of friends over there and with Bruna. So that'll be nice. We're gonna be in Dundee for the awards and then up to Aberdeen to see our pals and then down for a wee night in Edinburgh. So that's nice. Been doing plenty of reading of late. I got a little behind on my pools with some work stuff recently. So I think I've got about 2.5 weeks of stuff sitting. Obviously today's new comic book day. Picked up my pull list. There's plenty on that. Last week was a small week. Week before was a big week. So I'm about halfway through that week before. But there's been some great issues. I am trying to prune back a little bit, just with some changes in employment circumstances, but and also just generally wanting to trim back a wee bit and make sure that I'm optimizing quality. What about you?
Yeah, I mean it's that sort of idea that sort of initiated the idea for this podcast, which is something a little bit different for us. I wanted to sort of take some of our conversations out of the shop and just put them on the record, so to speak. The idea was to sort of chat about the comics industry at the moment and the different publishers. I think a lot of the publishers are in very different places to where they were even 2 years ago.
Mm.
I think that a lot of things are being done right in the industry at the moment. I believe sales are up something like 20% on last year. I believe there's a lot of quality out there at the moment, but I do think as well, in some cases, there is a bit too much quantity. And again, that maybe leads to, the idea you're
Mm.
talking about there, where you would rather prioritize quality over quantity. But yeah, no, I'm grand. I mean, I'm pretty much up to date in my pull list, but I do feel myself, well, I haven't read today's, but I do feel myself sometimes pulling back a little bit as well from,
Mm.
how many times are we recording podcasts? And we're like, so I had 37 books this week and 33 more books
Yeah,
this week.
yeah,
And it's just not sustainable. I mean, sometimes I'll read comics that have been, on for a long time and I read them more out of habit. And I think
yeah.
that's the worst thing you could
That is
possibly do.
absolutely the worst thing. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think that's the worst thing. And I also think sometimes I am guilty of, I mean, and obviously following creators is a massive thing. You'll get better quality that way. But sometimes if we've interviewed someone, I will automatically buy a book without going, am I even interested in the subject matter?
Hmm.
Feeling like, oh, I wanna help our buddies out, by buying the book. And that's a really weird way of thinking too, in some ways. I think uh I think you've got to read clever. I think you've got to read clever. The stuff you enjoy, by the people you enjoy, and it's got to be both of those things. And that's sort of where I'm trying to go. I think at the minute, I have a couple of considerations. Space in my comic storage room. I'm going to have a wee bit of time to start filing stuff away again, and I'm not intending to let my collection escape outside of that room. So I've now set aside a bunch of stuff to give away or sell, and that will be continuous. But the rate at which I'm buying is no longer sustainable. I think either for space or financially. I am doing a wee bit of replacing with Omnis, or hardcovers.
Hmm.
As well for that reason, I want to give myself a wee bit more time to read other stuff as well, to read books. God forbid, you
I
know.
think that's a big part of it as well. When your pull list is that big, sometimes you literally have no time to read or enjoy anything else. I mean, I have a big omnibus collection as well, of runs of stuff I've never read and I
Yep.
want to get to at some point. But the
Hmm.
problem is that, I'm just putting another omnibus on top of another omnibus on
Well,
top
yeah,
of another
same as
omnibus.
that. I now have a pile beside my bed that is turning into a tower.
Yeah,
We were tidying the room the other day, and Bruna goes, "What about these?" I went, "I'm reading them." She goes, "You're reading all of those?" I went, "Well, I'm reading the one
they're
on
on
the
the
top."
list. They're on the
And
list.
yeah, exactly. And so they're there because they're on the list. Um,
But yeah,
but yeah, in terms of
I find reading habits, yeah, for me are just changing a little bit. I mean,
yeah,
I'm very dedicated to my ongoing books. I've been reading and enjoying Batman for a long time and Detective Comics for a long time, and Daredevil for a long time, although that's now on a break from an ongoing book. I'm loving reading The Walking Dead Deluxe, on a
Yeah,
consistent basis.
yeah, yeah. But
What
that's
I what
quality
I
right there. That's
Yeah, I
quality with a
mean,
different twist.
what I find myself slightly aiming for now is, if I know something's a mini series, I sometimes am a little hesitant to pick it up in single issues because I think,
Yeah,
well, it'll be a nice trade to pick up. But then it's the double-edged sword of the comics industry. It needs to sell enough to justify a trade, and
exactly. Yeah,
that shouldn't
which
fall on the responsibility of us. You know what I mean? It should be, you know, on merit, I suppose. But I mean, I enjoy all formats. That's the thing. I enjoy single issues. I enjoy trades. I enjoy hardcovers. I enjoy omnibuses and compendiums. But it's finding that balance between
So
them all.
let's stick with the miniseries thing just for a minute, because that's become a wee bugbear of mine of late, particularly around Marvel.
Hmm.
So there's all these 5 issue miniseries, whether they're the retro miniseries or whether the current miniseries, whether they're, and that just irks me. You know what I mean? I don't need 5 or 6 different miniseries about 5 or 6 different characters. So let's say the X characters. We know that there's a bunch of different miniseries coming out now, and this from the Shadows thing that's about to come up.
Yeah,
Whether it be Cyclops or whatever else. What I'd love to see is, and I mean, and there's constant chat around, how censored during Krakoa, the popularity of the X-Men dropped off, that they're not a big pull in certainly in Coffee and Heroes. But they are the X-Men is one of those perennial titles. One of
yeah.
those titles you go, okay, well, but I've enjoyed Jed McKay's X-Men. I've enjoyed the Uncanny X-Men to maybe to a slightly lesser extent. I consider the Jed McKay book to be the core book.
Yeah,
But rather than these 5 issue titles that follow these characters for 5 issues, why not put that into the core X-Men book? Why not have the core X-Men book or 2 books follow different characters for 5 or 6 issues? Why not,
yeah,
why not split that story into 10 parts and have it as part of the, because they used to do that all the time. In Claremont's X-Men, you would be following a group of X-Men who are doing this, and then you'd maybe see Banshee doing this for 5 or 6 issues, or Thunderbird doing that. It's so why not do that, and pare down the number of issues and obviously there's an obvious reason they don't do that, and that's because they're trying to get an extra 4.99 out of your wallet. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Or 2 or 3 extra 4.99s or 5.99s or whatever it is now. But it's that's what I'd love to see. That focus on quality, that more pinpointing what they're doing, that strategy. But unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see that. And I think the reason we're going to see that is because largely I think the problem is the ownership of Marvel by Disney and the ownership of DC by Warner Brothers. I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest problem in the comic industry right now.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree. I mean, you look back at old X-Men issues, if I'm putting runs in the bays and stuff like that, as you say, you'll see a certain selection of characters for like 3 or 4 issues on covers, and then it's totally different characters for the next few issues and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I go back to Krakoa. I always, I use it as an example all the time. When it started, it was perfect. It was 6 titles. It was
Mhm.
when one title ended, which was called Fallen Angels, Wolverine came in, and 6 titles was manageable. It kept a core emphasis on quality, and then suddenly there were 8 books, then there were 10 books, then there were 13 books, and it goes back to 2 issues. It's the time issue and it's the financial issue. It's an awful lot to keep up with. And yeah, miniseries I struggle with, and you know both companies do it to a degree, but I do think definitely Marvel are going down that route
Yeah,
more and more
big
and
style. It's
more.
almost like they don't have enough faith in the things they're doing that they don't want to fully commit. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? They don't want to fully commit to an ongoing series. There's so many of these series now that have been cancelled, not even just in the X line, but that are cancelled after or pulled after 10 issues or
yeah,
12 issues or whatever. But if you look at the minute now, we've got X-Men of Apocalypse by Jeff Loebny. That's a tribute to the Age of Apocalypse. We've got coming out in January. We've got Psylocke Ninja, which is a 5 issue miniseries. We've got Psy Dimensional Rivals by Peach Momoko, which is 5 issues. Uh, what else have we got here? We've got the X-Men. We're coming back to the X-Men book the original X-Men book and the Uncanny book and that. We've got a Rogue 5 issue. We've got Inglorious X-Men, X-Force, sorry, which may be an ongoing, but is more likely that they haven't called it of 5 or of 6 because
Yeah.
they're just
They want to
hedging
see
their
what the sales are
bets.
like. Yeah.
Yeah, Wolverine's back, Uncanny X-Men's back, X-Men's back. So there's not that there's not that many at the minute, but we know what's coming up. We know that there's a Deadpool book, there's a Cyclops book, all of those sorts of things. So yeah, once again, I don't know. I mean, you can pick and choose, but it does make it difficult, and they really, it spreads creators thin. It spreads everything very very thin.
Yeah, I mean, we may as well, but if we landed on Marvel here, we may as well stick around with Marvel at the moment. And, I look at it as both a store perspective and a fan perspective. So, from a store perspective, at the moment, I'm getting these big deliveries are getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, which
But
great to
what
see.
I
Great to see.
but what I find is when I'm unpacking everything is that I have two full medium-sized boxes of DC books, and I'm not even
Hmm.
filling one medium-sized box of Marvel titles.
Hmm.
And I can't remember a time certainly in the 8.5 years we've been open where it's been that lopsided for one company over the other.
Yeah, yeah,
And you know, I struggle with Marvel a bit at the moment, and it frustrates me because I
yep.
want both
Hmm.
companies to be really strong. But I don't know. It seems like there's a lack of direction at the moment or something.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah.
The
I
X
think,
books
yeah.
are a little up and down, and it's hard to generate excitement for that. The Ultimate Universe announcement seemed to have caught a lot of people off guard. That's obviously made it a higher level, and how dare the creators find out? You've no ongoing Daredevil book at the moment. You've recently had an Amazing Spider-Man relaunch, which is great. The
Which
the
is going
current book,
really well, but
but
there's a lot of damage to undo there.
yeah,
There's a
absolutely
lot of faith to
to win
to
back.
yeah. I mean, I wasn't totally against everything Zeb Wells was doing. There was some great stuff, but Joe Kelly has been doing great work, and
Hmm.
even there was a bit of humming and hawing about what was happening after the Hellgate stuff. Where we now have two Spider-Man stories. There's the Cosmic Spider-Man, which is our Peter Parker in space, and there is the neighborhood friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, which is a different character or set of characters portraying, trying to make it look like Peter Parker and Spider-Man are still around. Those are turning into really interesting stories, and there are people who would say, "Well, I just want to see Peter Parker swinging around and fighting criminals. That's what I want to see, and I want to see him back with Mary Jane." And I'll not read it until. But these are interesting stories. This isn't. It might seem like a gimmick, but it's a couple of really good storylines, all taking place within the Amazing Spider-Man book. It's not two books; it's one
Yeah,
book, and they're telling two different stories. Sort of month by month or fortnight by fortnight. So that Amazing Spider-Man book is definitely worth attention there for sure.
yeah,
Um,
it's definitely building bridges back. I mean, we've seen numbers go up. Initially, when it relaunched with the number one, my pull list numbers went down because we say all the time a number one is a chance for it's a jumping on point, but it's also a jumping off point, and some people just go, "Ah, that's fine, I've finished that volume off." So there's a little bit of work to be, a little bit of damage control to do almost, but I do see the numbers on Amazing Spider-Man, they're now starting to go up again. So
yeah,
maybe people are coming to that.
and I mean Joe,
But
Joe Kelly is a recognized quantity to some extent, to a lesser extent maybe than some, but I mean the artist in that first was it Pepe Larraz was
yes, I
yeah.
believe at the start, yeah, yeah.
So let's not forget that. I mean, we sometimes forget ourselves that comics are a visual medium. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And we maybe are guilty of on our podcast not maybe pushing the artists as much as we would push the writers. Certainly, whenever you're doing an interview, it feels to me much easier to interview a writer because they have more to talk about than their process or the industry, but because they're the ones that are to the most degree putting together the story, But maybe, yeah, you see someone like Pepe Larraz in a book, you should be going, God, that's Pepe Larraz and Spider Man. I definitely want to see that.
Yeah.
So, and it was yeah, so yeah, highly recommend the Spider Man books right now. But I understand that it's a bit of a damaged brand. The same way as X Men is a bit of a damaged brand. But Jed MacKay again, he is turning into Marvel's go-to writer. A great Avengers run. His Avengers run has been very, very good. I believe it's coming to an end now with with the Legacy issue 800.
Hmm.
He's also on Moon Knight, which has been just one of Marvel's absolute, pillars for a B-list character. He's been on that for ages. The work he did in Doctor Strange was brilliant, and he's on X-Men. He's on the core X-Men
Well,
book.
Moon Knight's a good example of a formula that Marvel sort of fell on that has worked really well for that book, but not necessarily for other books,
Mm-hmm.
where they will sort of do 12 to 14 to 16 issues and then rebrand it with a new number one, but it's the same creative team.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been books, She Hulk did it. I think it was She Hulk, it was Sensational
Yeah,
She Hulk.
yeah, yeah.
We're about to go from Incredible Hulk to Infernal Hulk. Again, all the creative teams staying the same.
Mm.
And Moon
Thor
Knight
was an
seems,
interesting one as well.
or
The
yeah,
Immortal
the
Thor
Immortal
to the
Thor.
Mortal Thor, but that's that. I mean, they're what I don't like is that that we'll get the wee number one boost. That's what that's about. It's
Yeah, oh,
we'll get the wee
100%.
number one,
It's
but
almost like they fell upon that formula because there's very natural story points in Jen McKay's Moon Knight.
mm,
And it's almost like they went, right, well, this worked. Why don't we do this with other
mm,
books? And I don't necessarily think there's always a storyline reason for it. Like Fantastic Four, another example. Rand
yeah,
North was on it, and then
yeah,
just out of nowhere, in the middle of One World Under Doom, they decided, let's
yeah.
just go back to number one.
So yeah, so this is the difference here. I think I think almost Jed McKay has nearly he's understanding that the studio, the publisher is going, we like number ones give us a wee, and it's a false economy. It's a false economy,
Yeah,
because then you get a massive drop off in issue two. But he's gone, right. They like number ones. I can find story reasons to relaunch this book with a different name, and it works. He did it really well with Doctor Strange, the death of Doctor Strange into Surgeon Supreme, all of those sorts. He did really really well with that. He's done exactly the same with Moon Knight. There's really strong story reasons as to why we went from Moon Knight to, and the titles don't matter. It's a pain in the arse, I suppose, when you're trying to build a run, but a wee bit of research will help you out there. And I think we're about to go into Mark Spector Moon Knight,
yeah,
and yeah, I mean, it's him working and going, okay, this is the way I can give them what they want while still telling my story. I think, um, Al Ewing has done a great job of it on Thor as well, because there was a very good story reason why that has changed from the Immortal Thor to the Mortal Thor. And I think Philip Kennedy Johnson has also done it quite well on Hulk, because again, there's a story reason, and Marvel's known for, the amazing Spider-Man, the uncanny X-Men, the invincible Iron Man, the incredible Hulk. So
hmm,
playing with those wee taglines, I think is actually pretty cool. But yeah, but then you see it, that Fantastic Four thing was just a bit of a balls. That was just like, okay, we need a new number one, probably because there's a film coming out. Didn't make any sense to relaunch it during one World Under Doom. Kind of, yeah. So there's two pros and cons there.
yeah,
I'd
definitely.
like to see less of it. I'd like to see less of
I mean, even just outside of the single issues, when it comes to Marvel at the moment, and this is me with my retailer head on,
it.
there seems to be a couple of missteps or things that there's a slight lack of care about. I mean, we've talked before about, compacts versus premier collections, with, the premier collections are coming out at $15. You may as well just buy full price trade for that amount,
Yeah, yeah.
rather than the
Hmm.
smaller editions. So we'll not go into that. We've talked about that at length. But a thing's been creeping in recently, and there was no announcement about it or anything, and no reason given. But Marvel have long had a line called the Epic Collections, and they are reprints of older titles.
Hmm.
It's printed sequentially. It's really clear and really well put together in terms of, it'll say this is volume 6, this covers 1987 to 1988, etc., etc. Now, for the longest time, these Epic collections were $40.
Hmm.
Then they crept up to $45.
Hmm.
Then they crept up to $50. They're now
Hmm.
creeping up to $55. Now,
Mm.
that's the price point of an Invincible compendium
Yeah, yeah,
for probably half the content.
yeah,
And it's made me question as a retailer, should I even order them in anymore?
yeah.
Because I can't expect people to drop 50 quid on
No.
a trade that's 13 issues, it's,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there was no reason given for this. There was no, the rise in paper costs, or, no, like there's going to be a line wide, raise in prices or whatever. And this is at the same time that DC are doing their version of it, DC Finest, and I've no doubt their prices will go up over time, but they have a very strict $40, so £35 on those books. So
Hmm.
you put the two beside each other, it just I don't know. There's
Yeah,
just
exactly. Yeah,
Marvel
yeah.
seems so directionless at the moment. It's really frustrating as
Yeah, it
both a
is very, it
fan
is very
and a
frustrating.
retailer.
100%. I get you. I totally get you. I mean, and not only that, but it's that on the single issues that creep from 2.99 to three ninety
The
nine to
three
four ninety
to
nine to
four, and
5.99.
suddenly it's six for a number one for
Yeah,
four extra pages, and
and that's something I'm not willing to do anymore.
yeah,
I'm not willing to. One of the things that has sort of influenced my decision to start pulling things off my pull list is that pricing. I'm
yeah.
just not willing to.
You're not getting
It's
value for it, or you don't
no,
feel like you're
absolutely
getting
not.
value for it. For
Absolutely not.
and that's why again you prioritize quality. At least if you pay something a bit more for a certain book and then you read it and you're fulfilled, then you're sort of like,
Yeah.
okay, well that was worth it. But as a general rule, it shouldn't just be I'm going to get this no matter what
Yep.
sort of
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
So
So yeah, I mean it's definitely definitely they don't make it easy to be a Marvel fan. They don't make it easy to be a
I
Marvel fan.
mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, this is the other thing. I mean, coming across really negative here, but I mean, these things are all cyclical. I mean, I've no doubt
Hmm.
in a couple of years, Marvel will be up here and DC will have dropped off and this and that. But it just seems at the moment that DC are making a lot of really good decisions. Whether that's a case of they've sort of put Scott Snyder in sort of a little bit of a command position, along with
Hmm.
the likes of Mark Waid.
Hmm.
Obviously he's shepherding quite a lot of the DC universe at the moment. They seem to have a lot of the best creators around at the moment, whether they're
Hmm.
offering better deals or they're offering longer runs. I mean, we're talking there. We recorded a previews podcast and we were talking about Miles Morales possibly coming to an end at issue 42. That was Marvel's longest running title. Was it
Hmm.
42
Hmm.
issues? Catwoman is on issue 80.
Uh-huh.
Harley
Mad.
Quinn is on issue 70 something.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's so DC are sort of they're letting some of those longer runs breathe. But we've talked about it before in previous pods. DC have really stepped back from quantity, I think, and focused on quality.
Yeah.
If you go back 3 or 4 years, I was talking to someone about this the other day actually. Because obviously the consensus sometimes is DC's just get as many Batman titles out as possible.
Hmm.
At the moment, there's not an awful lot, and I think that's been a conscious decision to not just be so reliant on one character.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Batman and Robin Year One just came to an end. Dark Patterns, brilliant series, about to come to an
Fantastic.
end.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Long Halloween came to an end. You've got Absolute Batman, Detective Comics, the main Batman title, Batman the First Night just started.
Yeah.
But then you've got Batman adjacent titles like Nightwing and
Yeah. Yeah.
Batman and Robin and this
Hmm.
and that. And I just feel at the moment Marvel need a person or a team to come in and go and sort
Hmm.
of do it from the top down because like DC are enjoying a good moment at the moment. Scott Snyder said that was 3 years in the making to get to that All In initiative and the Absolute Universe. That was three
Hmm.
years of building.
Hmm.
So I like that they recognized there was something needed to change.
Hmm.
And I mean, the Absolute books continue to astound me. I've had 5 people in the last week say, "Put me on Absolute Batman, and can you source me the all the
Yeah. I
earlier
mean,
issues?"
it's great. It's great to see. I mean, I'm certainly enjoying, a handful of those books. Absolute Batman's great. Absolute Superman's great. Absolute Wonder Woman was good, but I was getting my Wonder Woman fix from Tom King, in the mainline universe. And part of me, with both the Absolute Universe and the Ultimate Universe, I find it really interesting, but I find it damning in a way that, these, Elseworlds books or What If books or whatever they are, these alternate universe books are are the top of the charts when it comes to both companies. I mean that should say something about the mainline books, like in both cases.
I think it says something, but I also think that they're attracting readers in with these books, and
Mm,
then the readers are sort of going, "What else is there?" So
yeah,
it's much easier to tempt someone in with Absolute Batman number one than it was with at that point Batman number 151.
of course it is. Yeah,
So what I've noticed, and I was saying it there obviously as well, people come in with Ultimate Spider-Man. We're now seeing Amazing Spider-Man numbers starting to rise a bit.
yeah, uh-huh,
When Matt Fraction came on the Batman, I think we had about 50 people on Batman. We're now in the 70s. So again, people are reading Absolute Batman and going, "Oh, is there another Batman title?" So the thing is, it's easy for us to, we know the industry inside and out. We know what to look
Mm,
out for. But a casual person or someone new to the industry is just like, well, I'm seeing this absolute Batman all over, social media. I'll give that a go. I've never really read comics before, but then they're discovering, and that's what I think DC have done well because they launched the Absolute Universe at the same time as their All In initiative. So if people came in and were reading Absolute Batman #1, there was starting points for 50 other books that month or 30
yeah,
other books or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
So again, a lot of planning went into that, and
yeah,
so I think that there is slight concern when they're outselling legacy books, but again, that goes back to what we were saying before. Don't just read things out of habit.
yeah,
If you're not
yeah.
enjoying something, just because you've been reading it for 5 years doesn't mean you should stick on it.
Yeah, I mean exactly. So what you're doing effectively is you're voting with your pound. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You're saying, listen, I'm not reading that anymore. So it's not doing it for me. Is there another consideration as well? So I think you're right. It feels like Mark Waid is kind of guiding the mainline DC universe. Scott Snyder's guiding the absolute universe, and there's not really anybody guiding. Well, Hickman was guiding the ultimate universe up until a point. There's nobody really guiding the various other families of Marvel titles and I think in some ways a lot of it's led by the studio, the MCU studio
yeah.
and Disney. You know what I mean? So, for example, we've got Dungeons of Doom coming out in January, 3-issue miniseries. They've fired a load of creators at it.
Miniseries are getting shorter.
Yeah, miniseries are getting shorter, but the business decision there is right. We want to hold on to the people who were reading One World Under Doom. Let's hold on to them for another 3 months. It's all
And
short
then
term
the
thinking.
Avengers movie comes out with nothing doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. And how many of these decisions are being guided by the studio going right? We need
Hmm.
to bring this more in line with this movie that's coming out or this TV series that's coming out. We need to yeah, this character needs to look like this or needs to be doing this. Or as it's what was it Tom Brevoort said last year? He said the quiet part out loud where the comics are just IP for the
Yeah.
movies and the TV shows. That's where the money's made, which is horrible. And so Marvel and the MCU and Disney have a much more long running, robust, and successful cinematic and TV
Hmm.
universe, or a multimedia side than DC do, or Warner Brothers do currently. So are the DC Comics going to start feeling that pressure as things ramp up, in their multimedia departments and their cinematic and TV universes? Are they going to start having a wee bit more studio interference, or is
I'm
the
not
idea
sure.
that
I
the
mean,
yeah,
I find even in that sense, and based on just anything like James Gunn and stuff has done so far, they don't seem to want to synchronize the comics with the movies. They want to show what inspired the movies.
mm,
So, like, obviously Supergirl's coming out soon, and it's not like they went, we're going to do a tie-in story to it. They go, this is influenced by Woman of Tomorrow.
mm-hmm.
Superman's coming out. Check out these other books: All Star Superman, Superman Birthright, Superman Secret Origin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So again, they're almost reverse engineering it, and not. It goes back to what I said about Superman the movie. It wasn't a superhero movie that was embarrassed to be a superhero movie,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
was very much like, here's the source material. Go and read these things from these guys. And they were even putting like books at the end of trailers and stuff. And how often did Kevin Feige even mention a comic book
yeah,
during the
yeah,
building of the MCU? Now, the building of the MCU for 10 years was an incredible achievement.
yeah, yeah.
Tons of
And
great movies.
very much based on the source material, and the most successful books were the ones that were most closely, the most
Yeah.
successful movies were the ones that were most closely based. But now it seems like it is the tail wagging the dog, if you
Hmm.
know what I mean, rather than the other way around. And I wonder, inevitably, it's a case of we want these people are watching these movies whenever they go to the comics, if we even are interested in them going to the comics, because it doesn't seem like they terribly are,
Yeah.
but we want them to be able to see the same thing. And I think that's maybe why we're seeing this weirdness with the X-Men, because obviously we're expecting the X-Men into the MCU any minute now.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's maybe a wee bit of water treading going on.
Yeah. A little bit of holding pattern
Yeah,
until closer
exactly.
to the time.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, and it will be inevitable, I think, that DC Publishing will start to feel that pressure from their owner,
Yeah.
as hopefully the gun universe, the DC, movie universe, and starts to really bloom.
Yeah.
I would imagine you will see that pressure, and this is the problem whenever these publishers that whenever they weren't owned by Disney and Warner Brothers, the creatives had much more say. The writers and had much more say with what they could do with the characters. They weren't as hobbled
Hmm.
as maybe they are now, and that I think is what makes the indie stuff so exciting.
Yeah.
That creator control, writers and artists being able to collaborate and do what they want to do. That world building. The two best examples are Ghost Machine and the Energon universe. Despite the fact the Energon universe is again another big license, but Kirkman seems to really have control of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it, and we'll finish off on this, and this will be, finished off on Marvel and DC. It's weird that the big two have taken time to catch up on what was popular and working in the indie scene.
Hmm.
In that, for years, Image offered number one trades at £9,
Hmm.
$10. It was like,
Hmm.
come and try our books. We'll not charge you $20. DC have finally caught up to that. There's your compact editions.
Yeah, great.
For years, here's your Walking Dead compendiums. Here's your Invincible compendiums.
Hmm.
DC are now starting to do compendiums. Here's your, Welcome to Bloodhaven Nightwing
Yeah,
compendium, and here's your Superman Warworld saga. So yeah, I mean, that creativity comes from directly from the creators because they're trying to think what's the best way for me to sell my book to an audience. And Kirkman certainly popularized the compendium format, for example, and they were just always coming up with new ways. Whereas, as you say, maybe you were stifled at the big two. It was like we've got a marketing department for that. Don't you
I
worry your creative little
yeah,
head about it.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I kind of feel like the big two have taken a while to come to it, but I think DC have been much more accepting of those ideas in the last couple of years,
yeah,
with that price point for compacts, with that price point for DC Finest, with the compendiums. And I kind of feel like Marvel needs to wake up to it a little bit and
yeah,
to try and think of ways to bring in new readers. Because again, I go back to it again that the compact range is the best thing DC have done in 10 years.
yeah,
You know, it
absolutely. Yep.
you I only have to look at you as an example. You'll have a huge pull list, but you'll be like, "Oh, there's a new compact out this week,"
Yeah, I'll grab
and
that
you
one.
don't automatically buy it. But if you're
Yep.
interested in the story, you're like,
It's
"Well,
because
that's
it's an
£9."
easy price point. It's an easy
Yeah,
price point. It's an easy thing to throw in your bag if you're hopping on a plane or whatever for a weekend, or
yeah,
it's they're just great, and they look nice on a shelf too.
yeah,
But I mean, the other thing I would say is they would get a lot more out of their creators if they incentivize them right. If they
yeah.
paid them right, if they and I know it's a little trickier whenever these characters are legacy characters, and the creator on the book can't necessarily like own them or whatever else, but they've got to find a way to incentivize the creators. The way Marvel screwed over Ed Brubaker,
Hmm.
in terms of a movie that made fucking $2 billion or whatever it was, and he ended up getting 5 grand in a handshake.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you, Cliff,
invited to the premiere.
and invited to the premiere. What the hell, like,
Because what was it? He said he made more off his cameo as like
yeah,
as a doctor or whatever in it than he made
the,
off actually
yeah,
creating the character.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah, no,
that's
the incentivization definitely. I mean, that's a big draw for people to
yeah,
independent comics because you know not everything's going to hit in the same way as The Walking Dead, but The Walking Dead was this black and white zombie comic that was willed into existence through pure determination. And
yeah,
it probably made Kirkman a multi-millionaire in the end because it did hit in another medium. But if he'd have created that for Marvel or DC, that wouldn't have happened.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
exactly.
so
So yeah. Well, I mean, incentivize them. Don't be fucking capitalist dicks. Look
give
after your
them health
creators.
insurance.
Yeah, exactly. Give them health insurance. Pay them right. You know, you know, don't try and screw them out whenever there's going to be a movie made.
Yeah.
Give them something, like, you know what I mean? So I mean, if you had creators paid right, and lines being overseen properly and in a really cohesive way. I mean, that
Hmm.
that was the cool thing about Marvel, in the 80s and 90s, was how cohesive it was, how one comic would reflect another comic,
Hmm.
but we've just seen we've just seen the major event of the last year, One World Under Doom, having absolutely no impact on any other title,
Yeah.
uh, except
Despite there
for,
being banners on about
yeah,
10 or
exactly.
12
We
other
know that
titles.
Doom's the Emperor, but Spider-Man doesn't seem to have noticed.
Yeah.
It's not happening in his world.
Yeah.
It's not happening in the X-Men world. So yeah, it's absolutely nuts. There's no continuity. It's not all connected. It's not all cohesive. It just there needs to be more oversight, I think. And yeah, and that. But yeah, I mean, the for me the offshot is that to a large extent I am definitely having trouble maintaining my faith in to various levels, either of the big two at the minute. I'm definitely not. Whenever my I'm pulling books off of my pull list, they're more often coming from Marvel or DC than they are
Hmm.
from the indie sphere. There's a couple, maybe I'll maybe read the first issue of a book by a creator and go, oh well, actually, that's good, but it's maybe not for me.
Hmm.
But more often than not, I'm looking at the must-have books on my pull list at the minute, and I'm going Conan from Titan. I'm going Ghost Machine from Image, and I'm going Energon Universe from Image. And those are my. If you were to say, Keith, right, you're only allowed this number of books in a week, those would be the books that I
Hmm.
would be sticking to without any sort of worry. Then I'd be looking at my perennial Marvels and my perennial DCs. But yeah, interesting.
Well, we'll finish up with a wee bit of talk about independent side of things because I can see we're breaking Keith's heart here with what a mess Marvel are in at the moment. So, you know, you've been nice and candid there, as always, as always.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, no, that's it. I mean, I said to people in the store all the time. I mean, we get categorized very early on as I'm Mr. DC or Mr. Marvel, when in fact we both read more indie books than we read DC and Marvel books.
Uh-huh.
And I think yeah, the like Image have always been a beacon, I think, for creators. Obviously, lots of creator owned rights, owning your creations, owning your IP, being able to take it to other mediums. But obviously, there's a lot of risk involved as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We've talked to different creators over the years. You don't really get paid up front. You work on spec a lot. Certain paper might be more expensive than other certain paper. It's up to you whether it's a cardstock cover or not. Do you deliver a quality product or do you deliver it as cheaply as possible? A lot of creators talk about they don't really make stuff through Image until the back end. So, it's that whole, guaranteed check at Marvel or DC for work for hire, or is it bet on yourself that you can be the next Invincible or Walking Dead or Saga or, whatever. But I mean, Image are just putting out so much great stuff at the moment. You mentioned Ghost Machine, of course, Geiger,
Hmm.
Redcoat, Rockefellers, Rook Exodus has come back
But
recently as well.
they have also been really, really clear in what they're doing. This group is the unknown war.
Yeah, it's at the back
Uh,
of every book as well, so it
yeah,
doesn't matter which
absolutely.
book you're picking up.
Yeah, 100%. That's Geiger. That's Redcoat. That's Junkyard Joe. That's the first Ghost, which we're just about to see. The
Yeah.
Northerner. This is this contiguous universe with these characters that we're all following that we've been with from the start, which is probably fairly critical. But also, it's quality. Every issue of every one
Yeah.
of those books is quality art, quality writing. People who care because they created the books.
Cardstock covers, good paper
First, yeah,
quality.
100%. And that, to some extent, that matters less to me. It's nice that there's cardstock covers. If
I think subconsciously it means more to you than you think. You
maybe,
know what I mean?
but
I know sometimes you'll be like, oh, I just want a good story and this and that, but I think it does make a difference. Like anytime I pick up an issue of Walking Dead Deluxe or an issue of Geiger, it's like this feels before you even start reading it, you're like, this
yeah,
feels special.
but if it was going to cost 50p or a pound less, if it was a regular cover, it
Yeah.
would mean more to me. Do you
No,
know what I mean?
I think while it's at that $4 price point though, I
Yeah,
don't
well,
like I wouldn't
yeah.
want those to be $3 books but cheaper quality. If they
Mm,
suddenly went up to $5 because they went, well guys, it's quality paper and it's, cardstock
mm.
and it's then it becomes an issue. But I mean certainly Ghost Machine have been, they have stuck to their $4
They
price
have
point the whole way
absolutely,
through.
and they're the great those great books. The unknown war stuff, and how they're continuing to slowly expand that and make it really interesting. And And Rogue Exodus, just that's a premium book. Like that's a
Yeah,
premium
so glad
quality
to see
book.
it come back there
Yeah,
recently
yeah.
with issue 7 as well, and then of course, I mean, Image is not above having licensed properties as well. Obviously, they got the licenses to GI Joe, they got the licenses to Transformers.
Mm.
They turned that into one big universe along with an independent book, Void
I mean,
Rivals,
that
as well.
was, I mean that's the sort of stuff that makes Kirkman just the ultimate personality in comics at the minute. You
Yeah,
know, he's and for a long time, because it's not just Walking Dead and Invincible and all the other stuff around that. It's also Skinbreaker with David Finch, which
Firepower and Oblivion
Firepower,
Song, and
yeah. But that, I mean, more recently, yes, Firepower and Oblivion Song were absolutely phenomenal. Again, he played with the industry. You know what I mean? He has that he has the reputation, he has the money and the power to
and
do
he has the
that,
love of the industry.
and the love of the industry. At the end of the day, he's one
Yeah,
of us.
yeah.
And but I mean, you look at that Skinbreaker book. That is, and I mean, David Finch, the real star there, who's drawn that on like double sized boards
Yeah, every
and
page.
just looks absolutely unbelievable. So detailed. I think it's what 10 or 12 issues. So again, that's Kirkman. But then again, Kirkman shepherding the Energon universe as an imprint of, I suppose, Skybound as
Yeah.
his section of the Image publishing calendar. Yeah, he's the chair, I think, of Image as well, isn't he? President
Yeah,
or something,
he's the only
Um,
person who is at the top level in Image that is not a founder.
yeah, exactly. But
Because obviously Walking Dead helped to save Image essentially.
just it's the absolute no-brainer that we didn't even know we needed was,
Hmm.
well, of course we should cross over G.I. Joe and Transformers, and of course we should bring in Mask, and of course we should, but it's just making this, yeah, it's great stuff. It's just great stuff.
And it's just
Stuff that
really,
I,
really cohesive. And
yeah,
again, it goes
yeah,
back to planning because
yeah,
obviously
it
that was in
does.
the plans for
Planning,
quite a while.
planning is the core of what we're talking about. Planning and world building, the core of what we're talking about here is what's making the absolute universe successful. It's what's making the ultimate universe to a lesser extent successful. It's what's making Ghost Machine successful and the Energon universe. It's putting a bit of thought into it instead of just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's certain creators that have that luxury because they're financially stable or whatever. But I know Kirkman has said that he wanted Skinbreaker to basically be David Finch's calling card
Hmm.
for his art. So
Yeah.
I think it's taken the guts of 7 or 8 years, that book. But he was like, "There's no rush. Take your time. Do it right."
Yeah.
Whereas obviously again, it's the whole thing about having that time against the pressure of deadlines and DC and Marvel and monthly
Mhm.
comics and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you got to
It's
get creative
it's
with how you rotate your artists and
yeah,
that
to a
kind of
lesser
thing.
extent, that's what Kirkman was doing with Wolverine's Revenge, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Given artist
Greg Pull.
Greg Capullo was giving him effectively a showcase. It's going, all
Yeah.
right, you wanna draw Wolverine? Cool, let's do it. I'll write this, so but yeah, I mean
And then of
those,
course for me the other one doing it right at Image is Rick Remender. He has
of course,
Generator,
yep.
and
Hmm.
again he's we've chatted to him before in the pod, and I think you and him are brothers from another mother with a lot of your beliefs
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
sort
absolutely.
of that sort of thing. But yeah, those books again are some of the best books on the shelves. The one with that Escape book with Daniel Acuna,
Yeah,
I think
very, very good.
is up there with the best stuff coming out at the moment. There's stuff like Sacrificers and Napalm Lullaby and stuff
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he's talked as well before, and again he's in this position because of obviously years of working with Marvel and elevated his name to a status. But he elevated that obviously through creativity and hard work. But he has said I just want to curate lines where story is king, and
Hmm. Yep.
it's a funny thing that isn't it in a entertainment medium.
Isn't it weird? Isn't it weird? And also, you look at what these creators are sort of pumping out, and not pumping out. That's very reductive, but what they're putting out and how they're how they're planning things and how they're playing with our expectations, and then to talk about an Image founder, you have flipping Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb on Hush 2, which is going to be finished what halfway through next year. I mean,
Don't even get me started.
that was never going to happen. You know what I mean? It was why did you even?
The worst part about that for me
Yeah.
isn't even that it's happened, and that's bad enough in itself. But the worst part for me is, and it came from a positive thing, but DC have been very good recently with doing Zoom calls with, creators, and, they're able to keep retailers up to date, incentivize them to order their books. Every Zoom call I've done, I've upped my orders, because
Hmm.
the excitement's
Of
contagious.
course, yeah,
But in that Zoom call, the words were spoken to us:
yeah.
order with confidence. There will be no delays. Jim's been working on this for a year. This will release monthly as scheduled. Recommended to people with confidence, and then here we are. Issue 3 of Batman came out today, Volume 4, and we're still waiting on the last two issues of Volume 3. Yeah, so all the positive stuff I say about DC, they do still have the ability to shoot
Yeah,
themselves in the foot
yeah,
with certain
100%.
things.
Yeah,
But
100%. That's But
yeah,
yeah,
I
I mean,
mean,
the other, I mean, moving on. I mean, I don't know if you've anything left to say about Image. I mean, it's generally positive in terms of
Image
the
in
stuff they're
general, I
putting
mean,
out.
you only have to look at our store. I mean, we have two full bookcases of DC graphics, we have two full bookcases of Marvel graphics, and we have two full bookcases of Image graphics,
Mm.
because we're not just a superhero store that thinks comics are all just about superheroes punching each other in the face. Like, a lot of the best storytelling in comics is done through Image and through other publishers as well. So
I mean, and I mean, Image are not necessarily against superheroes punching each other in the face because one of one of the best books coming out of Image comes from a universe which redefined superheroes punching each other in the face, which was the Invincible universe, and we now
yeah,
have Invincible presents Battle Beast, who was one of the absolute standout characters of Invincible. Again, Robert Kirkman, Ryan Stegman, back on, or not Ryan Stegman,
and Ollie.
Ryan Otley, different Ryan. Um, back on
Well,
that
again,
original.
Invincible's a good example, and
Yeah,
Robert Kirkman again of I'm talking about how DC created these ways for like casual people to get into comics, cheap compact editions, Absolute Universe, blah blah blah. But like, once the Invincible TV show hit, it was like, let's do new editions of the trades of Invincible.
yeah,
Let's do a new Invincible comic that's only available in comics and
yeah.
Battle Beast. Let's make sure the compendiums are never out of print, and that's just smart planning. Again,
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
not rocket science. Like, if I could have sold triple what I've sold of Invincible in the last sort of
Yep.
year or two. And
I
again,
mean,
that's just,
to DC's credit, the summer of Superman around the release of Superman the movie was at least an effort.
yeah.
It was at least an effort
And
to
at
to
least
do
it was a
that.
comic specific story as well. It
Yeah,
wasn't oh, this is, what happened off screen, or
yeah,
what we couldn't
exactly.
fit in the movie
So,
or whatever. So it was
yeah,
still the focus very much in comics. But yeah, I mean, the independent scene is stronger than it's ever been. Boom have a market share, Dark Horse have a market share, Image have a market share, Titan, lots of licensed properties. Obviously, we go on and on about Conan. That's a textbook example of how to operate a
yeah,
property.
yep.
Again, focusing on quality over quantity. Two books at the most, and even then, one of them is bi-monthly rather than monthly, with the odd event thrown in. And again, just quality storytelling. Um, yeah, I mean, the thing is, I mean, obviously there's been an unusual amount of negativity in this pod for us, because we're obviously
Yeah,
very
yeah,
proud to
yeah.
always be a positive one. But the comics market is
Oh,
very strong at the
before we
moment.
move on from Image, Bug Wars, Jason Aaron, that was phenomenal.
Yeah, great book, great
That
book.
was, I mean,
Honey,
again,
I Shrunk the Kids meets Gladiator,
yeah,
meets
absolutely.
Lord of the
And
Rings.
and I'm again that it's kind of an ongoing. You know what I mean? I'm not against. Well, this is season one, then we're going to take a break. We'll fire out a couple of one shots, and then we'll bring you season two, sort of thing. I'm
Yeah,
not against that. That's
as
not
long as
bad.
there's a good story to tell. Yeah, as
I
long as it's
do.
not just artificially elongated.
Yeah, I mean, I do sometimes wonder how writers and artists in the 70s and 80s and 90s, were doing 5 or 6 books a month, maybe more, without having to take a break over periods of years.
Yeah,
And yet, in the modern day, they don't seem to be able to do that anymore. With all their computer technology and such. Um, but yeah, I mean that way of doing things doesn't upset me too much. I'm already looking forward to the Spider Witch one shot, which is out I think in January, and then the rest, the next part of Bug Wars, which is in 2026.
yeah.
So those are some cool bits and pieces. Um, we've got to talk about Conan, haven't we? We've got to talk about Titan.
Us, Conan, Titan,
Yeah,
what?
that's I mean
Yeah, I
that's
mean, it's
yeah
it's a textbook example, as I say, of how to shepherd a property. They're doing reprints in omnibus form of all the older Conan comics. They're doing things like Savage Sword Conan Reforged by printing older stuff and
Hmm.
recoloring it or coloring it. Savage Sword comes out itself every 2 months, a modern version, and then the main Conan title, as I say, dips in and out of the
Hmm.
odd event, but is it's every issue feels like an event, to be honest.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's. I mean, and
Short stories in there, prose stories, poetry, you know, world
that's
building,
a
world
that's
building.
a real. So that, I mean, that's Heroic Signatures, the Robert E. Howard Foundation, the family, and Titan working together and supporting the creators. Supporting Jim Zub, who is clearly a huge Conan fan. And
Yeah,
and Shepard and that sort of stuff. I mean, he's not on every story in every book, but I always get the feeling that Jim Zub is
he's
sort
in the
of
background.
he's
The
definitely
puppeteer.
yes, absolutely the showrunner, as it were. So yeah, just the quality, just that the support from the organizations, and the publisher, the creators who love what they're doing and aren't willing to put something out unless it's just quality,
Yeah,
and all the while expanding the world in line
and
with
having a long term plan. I mean, I
yeah.
remember chatting with Jim, and he said like his original plan was a 3 year plan, which he
Hmm.
probably presented to Heroic Signatures and Titan before. And that again is an example of having faith in it rather than going after 10 issues. Oh, that's enough for now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
So
very interesting because that's a book that has, in the last sort of 5 or 6 years has gone across, Marvel, and then left Marvel and went over to Titan and Titan Heroic, and it was a great book at Marvel, but it's an even
yeah, it
better
was
book at
Dark
Titan.
Horse, and then it was
Yeah, it was
Marvel, and
Dark
then
Horse
it's
Marvel. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
so it's
So
definitely been shepherded around plenty.
yeah, it's funny because if it hadn't been Marvel's for a wee while, we might not have been as interested in it.
Yeah, true. True. I mean, Jay
But
Starlin did some great stuff with it, and then even
yeah,
Jim Zub himself did
yeah,
some good stuff with
absolutely.
Marvel as
So
well. But I definitely think it's been sort of let off the leash a little bit
oh,
with Titan,
100%, 100%. Yeah, great.
and really been able to embrace that 60s, 70s pulp style
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in all its various facets. So, um,
So
but
yeah,
yeah,
it is interesting. I was looking a wee bit at the numbers. We were talking a wee bit about it, and how in the last couple of quarters of last year, DC had made market share gains. It made like
hmm
a fairly significant market share gain, while Marvel had made a market share loss. And
hmm
one of the things that sort of you had rankled about something I had said was about what you're saying there is that DC has only made gains because Marvel has lost, and in actual fact, we were kind of both wrong there, because it turns out I've been sort of doing a wee bit of reading and watching around it. There are some, despite the raft of absolutely odious YouTube channels in the comic sphere, there are some really good,
some
well
good diamonds
informed.
in the rough.
Yeah, exactly. And it looks like for the most part, the gain in DC's market share hasn't been at Marvel's expense, but has actually been at the expense of some of the indies,
hmm
particularly Image. But what we are going to see, I think, uh, in the first quarter, the second quarter of 2026, is for the first time in a long time DC overtaking Marvel in terms of market share, and I wonder if we haven't gone too far in terms of studio interference and the publishers and whatnot, will that maybe be the kick in the arse that Marvel Comics needs to turn things
Yeah,
around?
because that's the
Is
thing.
that
It usually has to affect the bottom line before any meaningful
of
change
course
comes
it
in.
does.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
you can get
So
all the bad reviews in the world. Like all the people, as an example, complaining about the Zeb Wells Spider-Man run, they were all still buying it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So they were buying it just to complain about it, but
Well, yeah, I know, and
they
that
were still
that's
buying it.
there's a toxicity about that. Just if you don't like it, don't buy it. Don't give them your
Exactly.
dollar and show them that,
Yeah. Vote with
show
your
them that
wallets.
you have to do something else, So yeah, absolutely.
100%. So, um, but yeah, as I say, it was just a little bit of a out of the box episode for you guys, just to sort of let you know our feelings on the comics industry and all the rest. It's very healthy at the moment. There's lots of great stuff. There seems to be something for everyone at the moment, which I think's a great strength of it as well, and plenty of stuff available in loads of different formats as well. So, but yeah, if you ever need recommendations, just pop in this store. We'll chat your ear off, just like we have done for the
Yeah,
last
absolutely.
45 minutes or
I
so,
think,
and we'll inevitably recommend Conan.
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's definitely something to be said about, about reading comics in their original, sort of single floppy format.
Hmm.
That definitely, I think, supports our local retailers and supports the industry more even than buying trades. Though, I mean, we all love our omnis and our hardcovers and our trades, but yeah, there's something to be said about obviously continuing to buy and read comics, continuing to support your local comic store, but also being careful about what you read, and making sure you're enjoying what you read, and you're not
Hmm.
just buying stuff slavishly because
For
these
the
things
sake of it.
are, yeah, these things are not cheap and they take up space.
Yeah. And if you're not enjoying something, trust me, there's something just around the corner that you'll
Absolutely, there
enjoy
is.
much more.
Absolutely, there is. That's what our preview shows for.
Exactly. So make sure to check out the preview show on a monthly basis. But
Cool.
anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, guys. As I say, just a little bit of a chat about this sort of the current comics industry. As I say, an unusual amount of negativity in there, but loads of positivity as well. Um, don't worry, we're not going to lead with headlines of Coven Heroes attacks the comic. No, 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 that's not what we're about. But
Oh no, listen.
yeah, nothing's perfect. Nothing's
Yeah,
perfect.
great
But
books, great
yeah,
creators, but
it was a fine time chatting with you, my friend.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
as I say, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll hopefully see you guys in the store, and you can argue about every point we made in person. No problem at all.
Or post in the comments, once you see this, we love the conversation.
Absolutely.
All
Cheers,
right.
guys.
Nice one, all. Take care.